Love You to Death, Stan Kraychik Mystery, Book 2. Writer Grant Michaels, publisher St. Martin's Press, New York, 1992. Narrator Eric Aust. Chapter 16. My Heart Belongs to Daddy. When I got back to the shop, Nicole and Tobias had long since returned from lunch. "Where were you?" she asked, slightly vexed. "I took a break, doll. You had a visitor, a very sexy Mediterranean." "Branko." "No, the other one. Lance Leather, with his big red machine." "You mean Rafik?" "Uh-huh. He's not Mediterranean. He's Armenian." "Aren't they the same thing?" "No, doll, but you'd still approve. His family owns an export business in Paris. It's your kind of stuff, too. Caviar, foie gras, pâté, truffles." "Then marry him, Stanley. He sounds delicious." Nicole smiled lasciviously. "And to think he's a world-class lover to boot." "Boots? We haven't tried that scene yet." "You will. I can feel it under my fingernails." "Is that where a woman's intuition is?" Nicole's response was an enigmatic smile. I wondered why Rafik had returned to the shop, though, since he'd seen me earlier. "Did he leave a message, doll?" "He asked if you were involved with anyone." "And you said?" Nicole cocked her head slightly and replied, "I told him that you and the lieutenant were on item." As if on cue, Branko's familiar, tall, dark, and handsome figure entered through the shop's front door. He gave Nicole a warm hello, but when he greeted me, it was cold air. "I just received copies of the police reports from Abigail. The bullets that killed Dan Dougherty match the ones we pried out of the walls at the Kingsley house in Chestnut Hill." "So it was the same gun." Branko smirked. "You've seen too much TV. We know it's the same type of weapon, but we haven't been able to narrow it down to exactly the same gun." "It's still good news, though, since it proves Lorette wasn't involved in either shooting." Reluctantly, he conceded. "You're right about that. So when are you releasing her?" "Within the hour." "You finally saw the light." Branko's face didn't move. "No, we completed our investigation on her, and given the recent evidence, the original charges have been dropped. She'd been advised to remain in town." "What finally convinced you to let her go?" "I was hopeful that I, and not Charles, had ultimately been responsible for Lorette's release." "Look, Kraychik, I don't have to tell you any of this. I thought you'd want to know so you can tell her boy, since you're taking care of him." Nicole interjected. "Why don't you tell him yourself, Lieutenant? He's playing in the waiting room." "It's this way," I said, and led Branko to where Tobias was playing. Only he'd fallen asleep on one of the big, comfortable chairs. "He's all yours, Lieutenant," I said coyly. I doubted that relating the news to a young boy about his mother's incarceration was part of Branko's civil code repertoire. I glanced at Nicole and caught her switching her attention between me and the cop as he approached Tobias. "Son," Branko said softly, and I felt my throat tighten. Then he knelt down and put his big hand gently on Tobias' shoulder. "Tobias, wake up, boy. It's good news." Tobias stirred and opened his sleepy eyes. Branko said, "It's about your mother. She's coming home today." Tobias rubbed his eyes, then threw his arms around Branko's neck. I expected Branko to be embarrassed and awkward about it, but instead he picked the boy up and held him close in a sustained embrace. Standing beside me, Nicole sighed deeply and murmured, "Quite a scene." I muttered back, "Damn lucky little shit." "Jealous?" "Yes." Branko put Tobias down, then stood up and faced Nicole and me. "If you want, I'll take him back with me. It'll probably be easier for his mother that way." "That's fine, Lieutenant," I replied, my own voice a little raspy with inexpressive emotion. Branko nodded and said, "Good." Then, seeing that the shop's customers had been watching the touching moment between him and Tobias, he asked, "Is there a place we can talk privately?" "Sure, Lieutenant. There's the notorious back room." As I led him away, he turned to Nicole. "I'd like you to come along too, Miss Albright." "Gladly, Lieutenant," she said, and stepped briskly up alongside him. I wondered, does Branko want a witness or a chaperone? Once, in the quiet confines of the storage room, he asked us, "Either one of you seen Rafik Panassian today?" Simultaneously, Nick and I replied, "When today?" Branko aimed at me. "Since you and him spent the night together." Well, yes, I stalled. Make 'em beg for the awful truth, especially when their grammar's faulty. Where? Here at the shop, out front on the street. In fact, if you'd been here, Lieutenant, you could have arrested us in flagrante. When was that? Exclaimed Nicole. Just after you took Tobias out for lunch. So you were out with Rafik? She demanded. No, doll. He just gave me a ride. I went along to the chocolate factory. But her look implied doubt. I turned to Branka. Lieutenant, I still think you're going after the wrong person. Just tell me where I can find Panacea. I was tempted to suggest the epicure shop at Neiman Marcus, where Rafik's family name appeared on the most exclusive imported items. Instead, I said, I honestly don't know, but it doesn't matter, Lieutenant. He's not the one. You'd be better to question those two people from the Gladys Gardner factory, John Lau and Mary Finney. On what grounds? On the grounds that they were both relieved that Dan Dougherty was dead, and, if I may quote them, out of the way. Those are the words both of them used. I knew they hadn't said it exactly like that, but I had to convince Branko to go after them. Branko said, Thanks for the tip, but we have our suspect, and he's the man you insist on protecting. I hope I don't have to haul you in, too, for withholding evidence or for aiding and abetting a criminal. Are you using a script, Lieutenant? With Rafik, I'd finally found someone who was vaguely compatible, someone I might be able to spend a romantic Valentine's Day with, and now it turned out he was wanted by the police. Oh, I know, I was suspecting him too at first, but it's one thing to imagine your newfound love thing harboring a dark secret life during your time apart, but it's another thing to have the cops after his butt and yours as an accomplice. Was I so lonely that I'd date a felon? As the French say, I was in deep honey. Lieutenant, I'm telling you everything I know. If you want, I can make up some stuff that you'd rather hear me say, Branko grumbled. Never mind. He turned to leave. Wait, I said. There's something else, something that might finally convince you to look in another direction. Branko's eyes glittered angrily, which only encouraged me to continue my Nancy Drew shtick. If Branko wasn't going to treat me like an equal, like a man, I was pretty willing to take on another role. I continued. I know it's irregular, but is there any way to get a look at Princess Kingsley's will? Branko shook his head and pulled his lips tight. We're not the FBI. Aren't you kissing cousins? We can't violate people's privacy like that. Not even with a court order. You don't get a court order just because you're curious about something. You have to convince a judge you need a good reason for that. There is a good reason. I think the key to this whole case lies in Princess Kingsley's will. Something to do with including Dan Dougherty as an heir. Even John Lau and Mary Finney knew about it. Branko said, You've been reading too many mysteries. Not so, I replied. I am my own special creation. Branko grunted, then walked out of the back room and returned to the shop. Nicole clucked her tongue at me. You'll never win his heart that way, Stani. Who cares about his heart? It's probably as hard and black as coal anyway. Then with time and the right kind of pressure, it could become a diamond. Doll, you're going to make me spit up. But having seen Branko's earlier scene with Tobias, part of me wanted to believe Nicole's prediction. My optimistic, romantic, trousseau-ridden self thought, maybe, just maybe. Then I snapped myself back to cynical sobriety. Let's go say goodbye to Tobias. We went back into the shop to find Lieutenant Branko helping Tobias into his overcoat and boots. Spoing! Went my heart again. Branko stood up. Then in one strong, swift motion, he lifted Tobias and perched him on his shoulders, straddling the boy's legs around his strong neck. Daddy! He turned to Nicole and me and gave a slight upward jerk with his head. That was Branko's version of a fond farewell. Meanwhile, Tobias giggled and waved happily from his high vantage point. Glorious steed and young knight departed the shop through the front door as customers waved them off. Calm sea and prosperous voyage, I thought. Tobias's little voice called, Bye, Uncle Stan. Bye, Uncle Nick. Nicky gave me a cross-eyed look. Uncle Nick? He's democratic about gender. Then why not Auntie Stan? She asked and nudged me back to work. The rest of the afternoon flew by and I was busy every minute. My friend Francesca, who manages Chez, a local cabaret, dropped by to invite me out with a gaggle of gabbers to a special Valentine's season show that night, I hesitated, then realized I was no longer a foster parent. I was free again. I would celebrate. I would even shed the guise of Rafik's forlorn lover and Branko's misunderstood, self-appointed deputy. I would have my own good time. After we closed the shop, Nicole and I settled in the back room for a quick drink and a cigarette. A cigarette for her, that is. I'd already tried in vain to smoke, no matter the glamorous image it was supposed to project. It was too much trouble getting used to it all. The coughing, the dizziness, and the yucky afterbreath. Nicole lit a slender, rose-colored cigarette and drew the smoke in deeply. I did envy that first drag, the obvious pleasure it gave her. As she let the smoke slip from her lips, she said, "Now that Lorette and her son are back together, and you don't have to be involved with the case anymore, right?" "You bet, doll. It's back to work and play for me." That and the dependable love and affection of a Burmese cat, back to the simple life. "What about shopping? Are you giving me a raise?" Nicole ignored that. "What about Rafik? Aren't you going to try to save him now?" I paused. "No. Doesn't love call you?" I shook my head. "No. It was just one of those things." "But he's in trouble. He got himself into this mess." Another drag of cigarette, a sip of cognac, and Nicole continued, "So no more trying to prove to the lieutenant that you're right and he's wrong." "No, I don't care anymore. I helped Lorette this time. That's enough." I gulped at my bourbon. I did help her, didn't I? I was trying to recall what, if anything, I'd done to help get her released. I came up with a blank. Nicole shrugged. "Doesn't matter. Not tonight. I just wanted everything back to normal. No more cops, no more killers, no more babies. Just fun for me in the moment." Nicole gave a knowing look. "Well, you should have fun tonight out with the boys." "Or the girls." "Drag?" "Only for the performers. They're doing scenes from The Boyfriend with an all-male cast for the Valentine's Gala. Speaking of which, I'd better get going." "Have fun, darling. See you in the morning." We kissed and I left the shop. It was almost 8 p.m. when I got home. As I climbed the stairs, I smelled dinner through my neighbor's door. My stomach grumbled and my head spun from the aroma of fresh garlic being sautéed in olive oil. I was famished, and tonight I'd have time only for some leftover pizza from Tobias's recent encampment. So much for the diet again, and I had yet to undo the ravages of work. It's not the same as, say, a trucker who's been on the road overnight, but chemically speaking, a hairstylist's body can be pretty ripe after a day of bookings and sleuthing. I opened the door and whistled. "Honey, I'm home." Sugar Baby greeted me with a weary look, as if expecting more torment from Tobias. "Not to worry, baby," I said. "We're alone again. The place is all yours." I picked her up, and she licked my cheek with long, gasping strokes. I carried her on my shoulder while I listened to the answering machine. Francesca had called with some vague reason why the theater party group was running late, which was fine with me. That gave me some extra time to unwind, even heat up the pizza. I put the cold, obtuse slab in the oven. My nuker is broken, and turned on some hot tango music, with Sugar Baby on my lap. I opened my mail. Visa had upped my credit $1,000. The joke's on them. My college gay alumni club was planning a luxury winter cruise. Maybe next time, guys. A psychiatrist with whom I'd once worked in a community clinic with, whom I'd shared a brief supersexed affair, was announcing the arrival of his second child with his wife in upstate New York, and a yellow slip identified a package from New Jersey waiting for me at the Back Bay Postal Annex. It was probably an extra Valentine's Day surprise from my mother, the one dependable sweetheart in my life. My body needed a long, hot shower. First I fed Sugar, then I went into the bathroom, which is off the bedroom, and turned on the water to get it hot. On the top floor, that can sometimes mean a 5-minute wait. And with the spicy tangos putting me in a better mood, I got the urge to do something silly, something to purge myself of the past few days. With each gutsy phrase of music, I asked myself another question. Who needs Valentine's Day anyway? Who needs romance? Who needs Rafik? And who needs Branko? Who needs parenthood? Who needs clients? Who needs corpses? Who needs anyone? So I put on a little show for myself in front of the large mirror on the bedroom closet door. Shoes and socks came on first. with selective grace and timing, a prelude for which was about to happen. I unbuttoned my shirt and twisted my torso so that the front edges of the starched cotton rubbed against my nipples. I was good for quite a while, about one full course of music, then I slid the shirt off my shoulders, one sleeve at a time, until it was hanging from my waist. I unfastened my pants and let gravity pull them down my legs with the shirt while I bumped my hips to the music. I stepped out of the rumpled pile and danced around the bedroom. Sugar Baby watched with wide-eyed, bewildered look that said, "What's going on in here?" My strip show was weird enough even to pull her attention from her food bowl in the kitchen. It was time for the big moment, the briefs. I teased myself, pulling each side down and up to expose a hip or crack, then covering it again. Finally, I turned my back to the mirror and literally leaped out of my undies. I flung them high and did a pirouette to finish facing the mirror. My stocky body looked okay, even with the extra winter pounds it seemed determined to carry throughout the year. The smooth pink skin showed the faintest hint of last summer's tan line, though not cultivated. The muscles had been good tone and definition. I do extra things throughout the day, like holding in my belly whenever I shampoo a client. That helps keep it flat. The legs are good, my best feature actually, though they're inherited, so I can't really take credit. They're real Slavic limbs with meaty, well-shaped calves springing up from highly arched feet. The thighs are full and curved and sculpted like a dancer's, not sinewy like a runner's. I slapped my butt in time to the music and hooted, "Olé!" The cheeks turned red where I'd hit them, and Bruno, my personal pet, stirred to new life between my legs. I looked at my face in the mirror. The newly shorn red hair stood up like a brush. Dopey grin meant I was ready for the steamy heat. Then it all crashed under a wave of Slavic melancholy. Were these antics the reason I was alone? Was I so eccentric that others didn't dare to spend private time with me? Didn't anyone else like my flavor of fun? I got out of the shower at 8:30. The pizza was almost burnt, but I chewed on it anyway while I towel-dried my hair, something I forbid my clients to do. Besides, when it's as short as mine was, almost nothing can hurt it. I finished drying off, but put on clean clothes and headed out to Chez for a night of fun and frolic. But it didn't work. I was with friends I liked and who liked me, and I couldn't relax. Even the stellar performance seemed too contrived, too sophisticated, too intent on entertaining, not like my ingenious homegrown striptease earlier. I downed drink and drink, but that didn't help either. I was unpleasantly distracted by what had happened during the last several days. Sure, Lorette was free again, but what was going on in Abigail? Someone was after something, and they were willing to kill people to get it. Who was it? Rafik? John Lowe? Mary Finney? Liz Carlini? Prentice Kingsley? As much as I wanted to, I couldn't shake off the effects of recent events, and yes, perhaps there was that element of wanting to show Branko up again, to prove to him that even a hairdresser is worthy to breathe the same air as the rest of humanity. Perhaps the liquor was kicking in, if I could think like that. I stayed until the end of the show, then went directly home. Francesca was concerned that I was coming down with something and suggested more liquor. But I knew it was simply mental exhaustion, which doesn't take much with me. Within minutes after arriving home, I collapsed, and collapsing into bed, I was asleep. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.